Okay, so there were some questions about the confidence interval homework, so I making a video to show you how to do those problems working with you. So the first problem, we first need to decide what kind of problem it is. So this one is for the mean because they're giving you the mean and the standard deviation. They're asking you to do a confidence interval for the mean. Now the question here is whether it's Z or T. Well, the key here is that we know the population standard deviation. So we know what sigma is, therefore this one's going to be Z. So that's why we've got this formula here. So now all we have to do is plug in, and let's see, X bar was the sample mean, 0.481, plus or minus, you know what we can do, we can just copy this down and change the values. So X bar is 0.481, and this is a 99% confidence interval, so the value is 2.575. And if you remember, that's that value comes from, that's the value that if you take the negative of it and the positive of it, there's 99% between those. So this is the Z value where negative 2.575 and 2.575 would include 99% of the area under the normal curve. Sigma here, they tell you the population standard deviation is 0.35 and N is 100. So if we calculate the margin of error here, the margin of error is going to be 2.575 times 0.35 over the square root of 100, in other words 10, but I'll show you the calculator steps here anyway. And we get 0.090125. So that's 0.0901. So the lower limit then would be 0.481 minus 0.0901, which is 0.3909. And the upper limit would be the same thing, but just with a plus, 0.5711. So the interpretation then would be, we are 99% confident the population mean is between 0.3909 and 0.5711 particles per square centimeter on the employee's skin. Okay? And I usually like to put the units here. Okay, so that's number one. Number two. So here they ask for a confidence interval for the mean. This one has to be a T because we're not given the population standard deviation. We do have the sample standard deviation if we compute it. So we're going to copy the data, paste it into StatCrunch, and we want a 95% confidence interval. So we're going to paste it there, and we're going to stat, tstats, one sample with data, variable 1, and we want a 95% confidence interval from mu. So we'll compute, and that's our answer. We'll copy it and paste it over. And to interpret, that means we are 95% confident the population mean is between 8.5527 and 13.2806. And what are the units here? Hours studied. So in other words, we think the mean of all introductory psychology students studied for the last exam, somewhere between the population mean, keep in mind we're doing the population mean, is in between about 8.5 hours and 13 and a little bit. Okay? Keep in mind that doesn't mean that that's how much we think the individual student studied, the mean. All right, so in number 3, proportion of students who think parking is a problem, that's going to be a confidence interval for the proportion, and we always need x out of n, so that's 127 out of 200. So if we go back to StatCrunch, this time we're going to proportion stats, one sample with summary, and it was 127 out of 200, and we don't want a hypothesis test, we want a confidence interval. So we'll compute, copy, paste over here, and interpret the interval. So we are 95% confident the population proportion is between 0.5683 and 0.7017. In other words, we're 95% confident that between 56.83% and 70.17% of all students at the university think parking is a problem. All right, so those are the problems.